And you will be free to ask questions after she's done. And she will start by telling us something about her and what her goals are for the future. And then you may begin. Okay? I am her dissertation chair, since I was prompted to tell you all that. And her committee is Dr. Spencer Baker, Dr. Jane Servonsky, and Karen Brown from the Graduate College. And you may begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to support me in this event. I graduated from Howard University in 1995 with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. In 2000, I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a Master of Science in Nursing and Health Leadership. And it brings me to here today, and I'm here as a doctoral student. This is my family, and this is nice that everybody has come here to share this event. At this time, I'd like to present a study entitled Peer Relational Aggression Victimization Experienced by African American Adolescent Females. We all know that violence is a large and growing problem in our world today, accounting for an excess of 50,000 deaths per year in the United States alone. In fact, in 2001, 21,000 of those deaths could have been attributed to a homicide, and 31,000 of those deaths were attributed to suicide. As a result, a major public health problem has emerged. And more awareness has been placed on varying types of violence research as it impacts all of the families and communities in our society. As a result, the World Health Organization has taken action to study varying types of violence, all types of violence as it impacts families and communities. This expanding knowledge concerning all types of violence now includes violence or aggression that was not typically thought of as aggression in the past. This now includes relational aggression, which is rumors, backstabbing, and social isolation. And this act is often committed by females more than males. Relational aggression has impacted the lives of many adolescents and their families, because relational aggression, it permeates the lives of adolescents while they're in school. And this relational aggression experience has also started to permeate the popular literature. It started to permeate the popular circuit, so parents and teachers and society as a whole has now started to really realize that this relational aggression experience is something that is out there and it's important and it should be addressed. You'll see that in the past it has been addressed on popular shows such as Dr. Phil and Oprah. And with that being said, this lends credence to researchers studying this experience and why this is a problem and why it impacts communities. As a result, relational aggression, with the family being aware of this problem, now events should be taking place to help encompass the family network into this experience so that they can help the adolescent deal with this as they're experiencing it. Despite the increasing attention that relational aggression has received throughout the past decade, not enough is known concerning how this experience affects various populations and various ethnicities. A lot of the research that has been conducted with children and has been conducted with aggressors. As a result, there's a gap in how this experience affects, for example, African American adolescent females. So why is relational aggression important? The research has shown that relational aggression is very common among females. Why is this so? It's possible that the socialization of females has led them to behave in a manner that causes them to aggress in ways that are not readily identifiable. Just think about when girls are young, they're often told to be nice. They're told to not hit. They're told to act like ladies. As a result, this socialization experience possibly allows them to aggress in ways that are not readily identifiable. As a result, they'll aggress in ways that if you're not in that peer group, then you won't actually see it unless you're entrenched within where it's happening. So what relational aggression does is it involves attempts to harm others through the manipulation and damage of relationships. The research has shown that for females, relationship development is very important. The research has shown that for adolescent girls, adolescent girls need this connection. They need that development of a relationship network. For girls, it seems that is the most salient aspect of their development at the time. And relational aggression has been indicated to be damaging and hurtful to the victim as well as the aggressor, and significantly contributes to future maladjustment, just as physical aggression contributes to future behavior problems. So when you think about relational aggression, you have to think about the emotional damage that occurs as a result. When you think about physical aggression, you know that you're going to see the damage as a result of physical aggression. You're going to see maybe a black eye. You're going to see somebody with some scars or a broken bone. But with relational aggression, you don't really see the emotional scars unless the adolescent projects it, in which it may be projected in other ways, such as the emotional injury can be projected as depression. It can manifest as anxiety. It can manifest as an altered psychological state, decreased life satisfaction, or social psychological maladjustment. As a result, this relational aggression experience, when you think about a rumor or you think about the social isolation that the adolescent experiences, it causes a disruption in that normal peer validation process. It causes a disruption in that peer network. So for adolescents, they're really trying to develop this connection with their peers, and if they don't get it as a result of the relational aggression experience, they lose that camaraderie or that connection. And if you think about being on the outside looking in as a social isolation, you start to feel, the adolescent may start to feel sad or may start to internalize those feelings of being on the outside. This experience is important in college because you think about the adolescent that is transitioning from the home environment to a college environment. They're leaving their family and they're leaving what's comfortable in that network, in that context of home, and they're transitioning to a college environment where they have to make new friends. And if you think about the relational aggression experience, this can have a significant impact, and it can cause them to internalize bad feelings if they're not able to develop that connection that they desire. Why is this important? This is important because if it does manifest as depression. Depression is important because depression is the leading cause of disability in the United States, affecting 9.5 million people a year. Specifically for adolescents, once a primary episode of depression has been experienced, 15 to 20% of adolescents will likely develop major depressive disorder at some point in their lifetime. So when you think about the time frame an adolescent has, if they experience depression at a young age in adolescence and they have all that time later on in their life to have an incident of a major depressive episode, that's a long time to have repeat recurrences to come along, and that's very debilitating. But specifically in adolescence, or in general, depression, if left untreated, can lead to suicide. And this is evidenced by suicide being the third leading cause of death among adolescents aged 15 to 24 years of age. So the purpose of this study is to, number one, examine the relationship between peer relational aggression, victimization, and depression. Number two, to examine the relationship between peer relational aggression, victimization, and self-esteem. Number three, to examine the experience of peer relational aggression, victimization, and how it makes the African American adolescent female feel. And number four, to determine the frequency of familial involvement in the peer relational aggression, victimization experience. When you think about peer relational aggression in African American adolescent females, the adolescent is part of a family. We cannot take the adolescent out of the context of the family. So we need to look at the family and how they relate to the adolescent once the adolescent experiences this. We must, at this point, I'm going to define the family so we can have an understanding of what family is. The literature states that a family is a group of individuals formed to meet the basic needs of life, and it's individualistic to those that form it. It's a group in which the children depend on their elders for support, and it can be an intimate relationship shared by those who have a bond via blood, adoption, marriage, appropriation. So in essence, what this is saying is that a family is what you say it is. A family is individualistic to that individual. So when we're looking at, we're dealing with the adolescent client, we must need to learn to work with varying types of families, whoever the adolescent states is their family. Specifically for African American families, since the study is dealing with African American adolescents, we must look at the family values and the family traditions within the African American family. African American families have been reported to rely on many generations of support for stability. African American families have a strong kinship network with multi-generational links and maintenance of this generational continuity. So this indicates a strong support system and a strong value system. And this is important because adolescents will tend to have a lot of support within the African American family specifically. But what happens when they move away from home and go to school? Say in the instance of an adolescent traveling from one side of the country to come here to Hampton University to be at school. This affects the availability of family support and causes maybe a decrease in accessibility. So to understand the workings of the family, it's important to view the family within a family life theory. It's important to view it according to family theory. And the family theory that I chose is family life course theory. What family life course theory does is it seeks to explain the family as it evolves over time. It states that the events in the family cause changes to how it interacts with each other and interacts with the environment. And it seeks to explain these adaptations that the family takes when they go through this transition experience. So again, thinking about the peer relational aggression victimization experience with the adolescent that has left home and is now here in a college environment, you're going to see that the adolescent is going to have to try to find a way to get the support that they need from their family. Now, adolescence, where the study is dealing with adolescence. Adolescence is defined as a transitional period between adulthood and childhood. It's a time when significant changes occur both mentally and physically. The time frame, according to the source that you look at, ranges from 11 to 24 years of age. There are many important tasks of adolescent development. Adolescence is a time when the adolescent will move away from the validation of the family. They have received their family values and they have received their support, but now adolescents tend to, in early adolescence, they tend to transition to wanting to gain that support and validation from their peer network. Adolescence is a time of psychosocial reciprocity where they seek this validation. So if you think about the experience of peer relational aggression victimization, if you think about a rumor, if you think about that social isolation, the adolescent is then not able to develop that camaraderie or that connection with their peer that they would have liked. And this is a developmental task that needs to happen. So let's just say that it doesn't happen. They have this loss of camaraderie. They could then take on the position of an outsider looking in, which can then change the way they form their identity. Like I said earlier, an adolescent takes their values from their family, and then they get other values from the adolescent group, and then they merge them together to form an individual identity. But if they don't get that other half from the peer group, that alters the way that their identity is formed. Let's just say that this does take on a negative trajectory, and the adolescent can then maybe develop self-doubt. If they have self-doubt, they can develop anxiety. They can be preoccupied with how others view them and possibly cause maladaptive behaviors. So relational aggression. Relational aggression has really started to take off within this last decade. In fact, in 1995, Crick and Grofter conducted a study in which they determined that relational aggression is a significant concern for girls more than it is for boys. Their study was comprised of a largely white sample population. It had 60% European Americans, 30% African Americans. But what this study did was it indicated that physical aggression and relational aggression are correlating. They're a correlating construct of aggression, which means that this, just as physical aggression is important, relational aggression is important to study as well, because it is an overall aggression experience. To continue on with the research, Grofter and Crick in 1995 studied children, and their sample was largely comprised of white Americans. But what's important about this study is that they indicated that overtly aggressive and relationally aggressive friendships are similar. So just as physical aggression has a power struggle between the aggressor and the victim, relational aggression has a power struggle between relational emotional aggression and emotional force. I think I jumbled that, but I'm trying to say that there is a power struggle. Just as physical aggression is a dominating force over an individual with physical force, relational aggression is a dominating force using emotional force. In 1999, Werner and Crick, they studied undergraduate students this time, 225 undergraduate students. Their mean age for that sample was 19.5. Again, this sample was largely comprised of white Americans. But what this study did, the importance of this study is that it indicated that the experience of relational aggression led to an increase in rejection from peers. It led to the seeking of approval from others to gain that validation that is needed. It caused an increase in concern for self, not wanting to deal with others. And it caused an increase in affective instability. So the adolescent would not have a stable mood. They would go from happy to sad, just really an unstable affect. In 2002, Linda Crick and Collins studied 104 college students from a Midwestern university. The mean age of their sample was 20.6 years. It was largely comprised of white Americans at 85.6%. But this study was a study to determine if relational aggression translates into the intimate partner relationship. So what they determined was that, yes, in this romantic relationship, males and females both experience relational aggression. But what's interesting is that this study indicated that males were the victims of relational aggression more often than females. And that's interesting because you think about who's the aggressor on that side. Who is the one that's doing the aggressing for the male to be the victim of it? It's the female. And this goes back to the idea that females have been socialized to aggress in manners using relational aggression to get out their frustrations and their emotions. This is just maybe causing the cyclic use of relational aggression as a way to handle their frustrations. Well, to seek to fill the gap in the knowledge, to seek to get at the experience of how relational aggression victimization affects African American adolescents, Gomes and Baker conducted a study, a qualitative study, to lend a voice to African American adolescent females concerning their experiences of peer relational aggression victimization. The mean age for the sample was 18.3, and this sample was comprised of 100% African American females. An instance that was reported in this study, there were a couple of girls I felt I could tell them anything. I told them some stuff that meant a lot to me, like what was going on with my family and stuff and why we moved, just all kinds of stuff. And this stuff was deep to me. I thought they would, keep it confidential, and they didn't. They just told people, and then other people started treating me differently and stuff. Another female said, I had a friend that ignored me when I did not do what she wanted me to. She wouldn't talk to me. She would walk right past me. Another said, I came back to school after I had a boyfriend over the summer. And when I got back to school, my friends weren't speaking to me. Like I went up to them to say hi, and they weren't speaking to me anymore. These instances are evidence of a friend trying to control or punish an individual for not doing what they wanted them to do, or for not socializing with them the way they wanted them to. So in essence, it was a way to form a control over that relationship. And when you think about going up to your friend that you thought was your friend and the adolescent wanting to say hi to this individual and the individual doesn't say hi, if the adolescent internalizes those feelings, it's possible that that could lead to feelings of depression. Depression in adolescence can often be manifested as moodiness or irritability. And this is interesting because a lot of the time we think of adolescence as a period of moodiness and irritability. It's normal. So it's possible that we could dismiss this manifestation of depression in adolescence if we're not educated to look for that type of manifestation. And this is important because episodes of major depression in adolescence, they can be brief, but they can have a median duration of 12 to 16 weeks. If you think about that time frame, that's about 4 months. If you think about an adolescent that is irritable, moody, doesn't want to be bothered for that amount of time, and you go back and you think about the important tasks of adolescence that have to be accomplished, that sets the adolescent up for altered relationships in the family and altered relationships with their peer group. In essence, it changes how they interact with people. The research has shown that depression and self-esteem go hand in hand. In a study done by D. Clementi and colleagues, they indicated that depressed adolescent females were 5 times more likely to report low self-esteem and 4 times more likely to report emotional abuse. Thorne and Michelio in 1996 conducted a study to determine if self-esteem was a reflection of memories, positive or negative. If you think about the experience of a rumor being spread about an individual, that's an experience that is not likely going to be forgotten. If the adolescent is thinking about that experience and they're internalizing the bad feelings that they have felt as a result, this can lead to maybe an alteration in their level of self-esteem. The framework I chose to view this process of peer relational aggression victimization is Newman's systems model. I chose this model because it is a systems approach and it helps me to explain how the adolescent is affected by stressors in the environment. Stressors can be within the adolescent, but inter, between individuals. But what's important about Newman's system model is that it's interested in client stability and wellness as the client is impacted from stressors in the environment. Within Newman systems model, the client is described as being comprised of 5 interacting variables. They are physiological, psychological, sociocultural, developmental, and spiritual. Together, these variables interact together, they work together and create a natural and learned response to a stressor. Here you'll see on this Newman systems diagram, you'll see the interpersonal stresses are the social isolation, the rumors, the backstabbing. You'll see this first level, the flexible line of defense. If this level is strong enough, then the adolescent will not be impacted by the peer relational aggression victimization experience. However, maybe with repeat episodes of this experience, or if the experience was so strong that it penetrated this flexible line of defense, it would cause the normal line of defense to be activated, which then could initiate a coping response. However, if you have a repeat victimization experience, or if this was a really detrimental experience, it could continue to impact this normal line of defense and penetrate this line of defense into the lines of resistance. Now, if the lines of resistance are activated and if the client is unable to reconstitute herself as a result of this experience, she's unable to use her coping mechanisms to make her feel better about the experience, then she could develop an altered psychological state, which can then manifest possibly as depression. This is my conceptual, theoretical, empirical structure in which I'll be testing the model concepts. I'm testing to see if self-esteem is strong enough, then there'll be no impact from peer relational aggression victimization, which is the stressor. The victimization experience is being tested using the self-reportive aggression social behavior measure. Self-esteem is being tested using Rosenberg's self-esteem scale. And depression is being tested using the Beck's Depression Inventory 2. I'm also testing if the penetration of the lines of resistance as a result of peer relational aggression victimization caused damage to the core as evidenced by depression. That's what this structure is saying. This is my conceptual, theoretical, empirical structure indicating a theory generation. This structure is saying what normal line of defense mechanisms are employed as a result of the stressor experience. So what I'm generating is according to the psychological variable, and I'm going to do this I did this by analyzing the focus group transcripts using the interview guide to stimulate the conversation in the focus groups. The research design that I did for this study was a mixed method approach. I conducted qualitative and quantitative methods. This within methods triangulation design was used using a sequential implementation technique in which the participants were required to fill out the quantitative portion of the surveys of the study prior to the qualitative portion. The research has indicated that this method assists with data validity and consistency. This research study was accomplished in 2 phases. Phase 1 consisted of a series of surveys and focus group questions. Phase 2 consisted of telephone interview with the returning female adolescent college students from phase 1 that had a victimization score on the subscale. 214 of the 241 had a victimization score. For the quantitative aspect of the study, cross-sectional surveys were used to obtain information on the variables of interest. During phase 1, I used the drop-and-collect technique where I went to the freshman studies course and I talked about the research study and I dropped my surveys off and I told them when I would come back to pick them up, and I also told them where they could go to drop them off at their leisure. The research has indicated that this is a less threatening way of handing out surveys so that the researcher is not standing there over them, waiting them to complete the surveys. They can complete them at their leisure. During phase 2, I did the quantitative telephone survey to determine the amount of familial involvement in the experience, and the research has indicated that the telephone interview is just as reliable as a face-to-face interview. The qualitative aspect of the study, the reliability of the focus group sessions, was achieved by attending to the 3 criteria that Kidd and Partial argue I needed to establish reliability. They are stability, equivalence, and internal consistency. Stability refers to the research's ability to provide a consistency in the issues presented, and this was accomplished by using the same interview guide throughout all focus group sessions. Equivalence describes the researcher's ability to provide consistent moderators and coders for the focus group sessions, which was myself. Internal consistency refers to maintaining one predominant researcher for the content analysis and debriefing sessions, and again, that was myself. I was also educated on focus group techniques, and I possessed the ability to monitor the focus group as it was being conducted. And I also had a qualified person on hand to be contacted if anything happened in the focus group session that needed to be addressed. My sample and setting, the setting was a Southeastern University in the United States. The targeted population was African American adolescent females. To prevent the risk of committing a type 2 error, I conducted a power analysis For this study, I used the established social sciences values for the alpha level and the power. The alpha was set at 0.05 and the power was set at 80. To get at my effect size, I used a meta-analysis, whereas the effect size correlating relational victimization with depression and self-esteem was 0.42. So in conducting this power analysis, the sample size that I needed to generate was in the range of 42 to 56 participants. The inclusion criteria for the quantitative portion of the study during phase 1 was that the student had to be at least 18 years old, had to be a freshman at Hampton University, and had to be enrolled in the University 101 course. The inclusion criteria for the focus group during phase 1 was that they had to be an African American female, no more than 1 year removed from attending high school, and had to have completed a self-report of aggression and social behavior measure, and had to have a victimization score on the peer relational aggression victimization subscale. The inclusion criteria for the telephone survey during phase 2 was, again, had to be African American female, had to have a victimization score on the SRASBM during phase 1, and she had to be a returning student at phase 2, and then had to have a working telephone number for me to be able to contact them. The procedures: I obtained IRB approval prior to collecting all data. I obtained written consent from the participants prior to collecting the survey data and the focus group data. I obtained verbal consent prior to conducting the telephone interview. And then the students who agreed to participate in conducting the surveys were given extra credit in the freshman studies course. And those who participated in the focus group sessions and the telephone interview were given $10 gift cards for each participation to a local shopping mall. The data was collected by myself, the principal investigator, and other trained student investigators from the Behavioral Science Research Center. The demographic questionnaires in all surveys were numbered to maintain participant confidentiality. The instruments were then separated so that personal identifying information could not be connected together easily. The completed instruments were then separated and kept in a locked filing cabinet. And all data from the study is reported in the aggregate form, thereby eliminating the potential for the individual identifying information to be kept confidential. After collecting the survey data, a random sample of the female participants with a victimization score on the SRASBM were then selected to attend a focus group meeting. From that random selection, the female participants were contacted via the telephone and invited to participate in the focus group. 4 focus groups were held. 2 were held here in the School of Nursing, and 2 were held in the dorm on campus. The surveys used in this study were a demographic survey, the self-report of aggression and social behavior measure, which was a 56-item instrument for the 7-point Likert scale, which measured various aspects of relationship behaviors. The Beck Depression Inventory 2 was a 21 self-report instrument to assess for signs, symptoms of depression. The Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale is a 10-item instrument used to assess for overall global self-esteem. And then the Peer Relational Aggression Victimization Family Self-Survey was designed for this study to ascertain the familial involvement in the experience. And it was designed according to the victimization subscale of the self-report of aggression and social behavior measure. The demographics of my survey: I had 241 self-identified African American adolescent females with a mean age of 18.3. The 4 most frequently reported locations were Virginia, New York, Maryland, and California. And I also had 3 other locations other than the continents of the United States, 1 participant each. 1 was Antigua, 1 was Germany, and 1 was Puerto Rico. So that lends to say that the females did come from all over. Research question number 1. What is the relationship between peer relational aggression victimization and depression? I hypothesized that as peer relational aggression victimization increases, depression increases. To answer this question, a Pearson product moment correlation was conducted. The bivariate correlation was significant at the 0.01 level. The correlation value was a 0.29, which indicated a medium effect size. And to determine the extent to which the peer relational aggression victimization experience can predict depression, the bivariate correlation was squared, which indicated that 8% of the depression variable could be attributed to its linear relationship with peer relational aggression victimization. As a result, the null hypothesis was rejected and the hypothesis was accepted. Research question number 2. What is the relationship between peer relational aggression victimization and self-esteem? The hypothesis is, as peer relational aggression victimization increases, positive self-esteem decreases. Again, a Pearson product moment correlation was conducted, and it was significant at the 0.05 level. The bivariate correlation was a negative 0.14, indicating a small effect size. However, this study indicates that low scores on self-esteem are associated with high scores on peer relational aggression victimization. Again, the bivariate correlation was squared to determine the proportion of variance that self-esteem could be attributed to peer relational aggression victimization. As a result, it was determined that 2% of the self-esteem variable could be attributed to peer relational aggression victimization. The null hypothesis was rejected and the hypothesis was accepted. Research question 3. How does the experience of peer relational aggression victimization make the African American adolescent female feel? I had 15 participants in the focus group sessions. I did a content analysis of the focus group transcripts and identified themes, which were then validated by other qualified qualitative researchers. This probing question was used to determine the reaction in which a stress response was initiated. This question was posed after the participants were asked to discuss an experience in which they were a victim of peer relational aggression victimization. It provided an opportunity for the females to articulate their feelings as a result of the experience. Overall, there were 7 themes that emerged from the focus group questions. The next 2 themes are ones that indicate a stress response. Theme 1, hurt. It hurt me because it was like if you have a problem, you can go tell somebody else in the friendship circle, but you can't come to me and talk about it, and we're supposed to be friends. Another girl said, I just stopped talking to her, but oh gosh, I remember I went home and cried so long. Another girl said, it's hard to adjust, so it was hurtful and it still hurts me. Previous research has indicated that the level of hurt the female feels is in direct relation to how close they are. So if the female was close to this person that aggressed against her, the research has said that she would feel more hurt. However, the research has also indicated that hurt and anger are kind of in tandem. They go hand in hand. One of the females said, I would get angry at my friend because she was just letting it happen. I was so angry, another girl said. And another said, it made me feel bad, kind of angry because I never did that to her. As a result of hurt and anger being so closely related, it seemed that these experiences were an initial way to help the victimized female get over the power, or it was a response to the powerlessness that she felt as a result of the experience. The next set of probes were used to get the females to discuss what they did to cope as a result of the victimization experience. I asked, what did you do after this happened? How did you deal with your feelings as a result? Did you talk to anyone else about this? Overall, 5 of the themes emerged from these probing questions. 3 could be viewed as positive in my view, and 2 could be viewed as negative. However, these coping responses did correlate with, or were similar to coping responses that had been reported in the majority literature, in the majority population. Distancing from others. From my past experience, it's kind of hard to call everyone my friend now. I do not take the word friend lightly. I probably have 3 main friends. There is the acquaintance, somebody you know I will hang around, but I will not tell you all of my business. Then I have the associates. We will talk and speak and laugh and joke and have general conversation. But friends, I do not take lightly. Once you hurt me one time, I'm going to feed you with a long spoon. That is saying, I'm going to keep my distance. Another said, I'm concerned about what somebody might think of me and how I feel, and so sometimes I hold back. The coping response of distancing from others was voiced as a way for the adolescent female to protect herself from the hurt of repeat victimization. From the stories shared, it appeared that the females developed a protective wall to guard against future hurt. In essence, it seemed to change the way the female interacted with individuals to form relationships, informing relationships. Theme 4, retaliation. Yeah, I turned the tables on her and did to her what she did to me. We went out somewhere, there wasn't enough room in the car, and she wanted to go. And I was like, well, there's no room, so either you're going to have to cab there or not go, or whatever. She was like, that was real messed up how you just left me. We would never stop being friends. I mean, it didn't feel good because I saw her face when she walked away, but I was like, well, I guess she knows how I feel now. Another said, oh yeah. I've been a victim of it, and I've been a giver of it. I'm on the giving end and the receiving end. The coping response of retaliation was voiced as a way of making the adolescent female feel better about the victimization experience. It appears as though she used this coping response to make the other female feel the hurt that she felt when she was victimized. It seemed to be a protective mechanism to prevent the adolescent female from being the host of repeat victimization experiences, whereas the adolescent female would take on this stance of aggressor so as to prevent herself from being the one that was aggressed against most often. Theme 5, expressing feelings with friends, family, or self. Me and my friend talked about it. I would tell somebody or write it down. As I grew older, I've learned to talk about it. It's really good to talk about things because holding it inside is not going to solve any problems. Even if you don't talk about it to the person or confront the person, tell someone you know. The expression of feelings was articulated as a way to get out the emotions felt post-victimization experience. Some of the females voiced being able to talk to their family or talk to their friends. Well, some talk to their friends and others talk to their family members. The research suggests that seeking social support after relational aggression is a coping strategy that may help to preserve the friendship by allowing the victim to get out her emotions by talking to somebody else instead of the aggressor, so as to not create an open conflict with the aggressor. Now, the research has indicated that this could, if this is done with another friend, this could maybe further perpetuate the relational aggression cycle because it's a way to allow rumors to be spread. And as a result, maybe the females in this study chose not. The research says that females who choose to keep it to themselves kind of have that in mind, whereas they don't want to further perpetuate the cycle of relational aggression, so they write it down. Theme 6, coping by confronting the aggressor. I would approach them. I would try to be as calm as possible, even though I may be mad about it. I'd tell them how I feel. I'd tell them, listen, you're talking about me and you can't talk about me to my face and tell me how you feel about me to my face. You have to go behind my back and do it. Then maybe you know we should keep it at a distance. Another, because if I don't confront them, it's going to bother me. It's going to keep nagging at me and I'm going to wonder, what's going on? Why was she talking about me? Coping by confronting the aggressor was a way in which the adolescent female felt she could deal with the problem in a forthright manner. Not all the females were able to voice this coping response, but those that were able to voice it appeared to exude an air of self-confidence and assurance despite their victimization experience. The ability to use this coping response seemed to coincide with a level of closeness between the aggressor and the victim, as indicated in previous research. Whereas if the victim was not as close to the aggressor, it was more easy for her to be confronted. That's what the literature states. Theme 7, working it out. Like, me being the person I'm being, I'm going to show her what a real friend is. I'm going to show her because she does not know how to be a real friend like me. So I try and help my friends, like build them up. Like if they have a weakness that I know I'm strong at, I try and show them that it don't always have to be this way. It don't have to be like that. But it's a little over-exaggerated when we expect too much out of females because it's like we know how we are. The coping response of trying to work it out with the aggressor seemed also to depend upon the level of closeness between the aggressor and the victim. The females voiced a willingness to work it out with the aggressor if they felt they had a history that needed to be preserved, as indicated by showing the friend saying, I want to show her what a real friend is like. I want to show her how to be a friend. The schematic here shows the possible path that could be taken as a result of the peer relational aggression victimization experience. You can see here, after the experience, the adolescent can feel hurt or anger, depending on the level of closeness, and the choices, or as a result, the coping mechanisms depend on the level of closeness as indicated before, as well as the final response of either working it out, retaliating, or distancing. Research question 4. What is the frequency of familial involvement in the peer relational aggression victimization experience? Now, if you remember, those that participated in this telephone survey did have a victimization score. And I said earlier, 214 of the 241 had a victimization score. But then, another criteria to be included in this part was that they had to have a working telephone number. Out of that group, I had 76 eligible participants for this interview over the telephone. And I had 35 respond. And so that was a 46% response. However, 91% of the females did mention to their families the presence of female friends at school. But 60% of the females did not discuss with their family members events such as being left out of activities or feeling lonely. 90% of the females did not go home on the weekends due to a lack of friends to socialize with. So although they had a victimization score, it didn't say that they were seeking. This did not evidence that they were seeking to go home to feel better. This next table is kind of small to read, but in essence it just tells you what I just said. It gives you the percentages and the frequency of the response. There were some limitations of this study. First, the study was conducted solely on college freshmen. Although that was my population of interest, it is possible that if the study is conducted using an older population, that the results could be different as a result of the maturation process, the coping mechanisms learned later on in life through life experience. The survey process did include numerous surveys. Not only were my surveys used, but they were surveys that were used in a larger study. And although we took measures to prevent against fatigue, it is possible that by the time they got to my surveys, they could have been tired. The peer relational aggression victimization family self-survey used in phase 2 was not directly linked numerically to phase 1. So that was a limitation because I was not able to see those who had the victimization score. If they had a higher victimization score, were they more apt to contact their family members at home? I wasn't able to connect the two. All I knew was that they did have a victimization score. The focus group setup did prove to be a limitation as well. The first focus groups were set up here in the School of Nursing, and it's possible that that was more convenient to myself than it was to the participants because I had not a great participation at that point. They were held in the wintertime, and it was night. They had to walk across campus to get here, and it proved that they just didn't want to do that. So when thinking about that, I changed the next set of focus groups to be conducted in the dorm, and I had a much better turnout then. In conclusion, peer relational aggression victimization did initiate a stress response from the adolescent female. It did affect her normal line of defense by causing a stress response of anger and hurt, and it did cause her to employ coping mechanisms to ward off that normal line of defense penetration in an effort to reconstitute herself. However, the results suggest that once reconstitutive efforts are unsuccessful, a negative impact on the lines of defense and the client core could be felt, causing her to be in an altered state of wellness. And this altered state of wellness is indicated by peer relational aggression victimization correlating with depression and self-esteem. This study did help to fill the gap of the knowledge concerning African American adolescent females and their experience of peer relational aggression victimization by proving that it does exist as a stressor in varying forms in this population. Implication for nursing. Nurses should seek to assist the families of adolescent clients who are experiencing relational aggression by assisting and educating in adequate coping mechanisms to deal with the experience. Because the adolescent is in the context of the family, and because the family does model behaviors for the adolescent, it would be helpful for the family to be able to model a behavior with positive coping mechanisms, with communication styles. It's helpful for the family to be able to model this behavior to the adolescent, can then translate this into an experience of peer relational aggression victimization. In clinical practice, nurses should be able to recognize the warning signs and manifestations of this negative experience. It's possible we do interact with adolescent clients who are irritable, who are moody, who are experiencing an alteration in their level of wellness. And it would be nice for nurses to be able to use this relational aggression knowledge to see if this is a precipitating factor. It would be helpful if nurses did automatically use that as one of their assessment techniques. In education, I'm translating that to have nurse educators include that in the education process of nursing students, have nursing students gain comfort in assessing for this type of experience. And in research, it would help that nurses got in on the research concerning relational aggression, because a lot of the research has been conducted in the social science realm, and it's helpful because we know that relational aggression does result in maladaptive behaviors, and it's important to have nurses in on the discussion concerning relational aggression, because we may be able to better inform concerning the alteration in wellness. Recommendation for further research. Studies should be conducted to explore the effectiveness of the techniques used in the family to detect the presence and the manifestations of the victimization experience, to determine the effectiveness of that communication style or the patterns of behavior. Studies should also be done to test intervention methods designed to teach communication and coping skills to the adolescent who is experiencing peer relational aggression victimization. It's important to do this within the context of the family, because the adolescent may feel more comfortable within the family negotiating this type of conflict resolution, because they may be more comfortable with their family member. And again, parents can model the appropriate actions and ways to handle this experience. And looking at the results of this study, questions came up that I think could be used to expand the research. One question was, does the coping mechanism of retaliation after the peer relational aggression victimization experience lead to an increase in the victim's level of self-esteem? So I'm wondering if I'm retaliating against you because I want to make you feel like I felt, or because I want to prevent myself from being the victim of relational aggression. Does that make me feel better when I hurt you? That's a question to ask. Or does that make the adolescent feel better? Does the coping method of distancing others after peer relational aggression lead to an increase in feelings of depression? So if now I have these 3 levels of friends and I've isolated myself, does that make me feel better, or does that cause feelings of depression? Any questions?
Okay. The first questions will be asked by the committee, and I will give the graduate college representative a chance to say whatever it is she needs to say. Dr. Baker is from the School of Liberal Arts and Education. He's the chair of the Department of Education, and he will begin first. Dr. Servonsky is a member of the School of Nursing faculty and is coordinator of the Pediatric Nurse Practitioner Program. And after that, we will allow our Dean, Dr. Constance Hendricks, to ask your questions. And then Dr. Hammond, as coordinator of the PhD program, to ask her questions. And then we will open it up to everyone else. Dr. Baker.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate that. First, let me apologize for my tardiness. Normally I would be here early, but Dr. Hendricks has tasked me, and I've been jobbing hard for the School of Nursing for the last 3 days. However, first, let me begin by saying what a great joy and a pleasure it was having you work with me during that period of time you were collecting data with the freshmen. I've been around for a couple of days now and recognizing scholarship, intelligence, that conscientiousness that makes me smile so much. And it has reflected so greatly in this dissertation. And I have to remind you that this dissertation process is supposed to be a discourse among colleagues. So I shall begin this discourse. First of all, I'd like to ask your feelings after doing so much work, going back and forth, being aggressive and creative, and ensuring that you receive the people in the focus groups and the telephone interviews, and it all boils down to this. Just a few moments of standing up there. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm proud of the results. I'm proud that I was able to lend a voice to the African American female population. I felt that there was a gap in how this experience was displayed. A lot of the literature focused on the majority population, and I really wanted to see, I wanted to show that this experience affects us as well. It affects the African American population as well, and I wanted to show that, I wanted to see if it was similar. And I think that the research has proved that the response to it and the experience is similar.
I'm going to overlook your mentions of Dr. Phil and Dr. Miss Oprah. However, I would like to know, do you think that this difference between males and females, men and women in their communicative process, where men are so quiet and they don't express their emotions as much, do you think that that has a lot of relationship with the relational aggression?
Do I think that males, are you saying, do I think that they're quiet so that they're not relationally aggressed against?
Because males don't speak of their emotions as females do. Mm-hmm. That doesn't leave them as open to relational aggression or to initiate it. Mm-hmm.
I think that may be a way to look at it, but the literature has stated that for females, that relationship connection is more important than it is for males, typically in adolescence. So whereas males can, if they're upset or they aggress in manners that are physically oriented, they tend to aggress and get over it. But for females, the research has shown that they will aggress emotionally and get at the heart of that relationship network.
Do you think that acculturation with the family, as well as male and female, might have something to do with it? And I'd like to expand a little bit, because the family, especially the black family, as it becomes more and more part of the majority values, that the family has changed, and that male and females now are seeing each other on more of an equal line, and this concept of a metro male. Maybe this relational aggression might have more impact now as we see it.
Yeah, and I think also that the research has shown that as males get older, whereas when they're younger they may aggress in more physical manners, but when they get older, say college population, they maybe have learned to get in on that socialization process, and they will aggress in ways that aren't readily observable as well, because they don't want to be seen as a bully. Maybe in a college environment or in a workplace, it's just not acceptable to aggress in physical manners as you get older. So I think that they do, the research has shown that they do aggress relationally as well.
you just let the cat out of the bag for my female colleagues here about how we get back at them every now and then. Do you think that the family itself may be an answer to stopping depression and building self-esteem?
I personally think that the family has a big part in that. I think the way you're dealt with in your family, if you're praised in your family, if you're esteemed in your family, then you're able to hold on to that values. You know, earlier I said the adolescent gets things from their families to develop their personal identity. And I think if those things are strong, maybe in the instance of relational aggression, if they're able to focus on what they got from their family, that the family said, oh, you're great, you're wonderful, then if somebody else on the outside is saying it, then maybe it can have a counterbalancing effect. So I think the family is important in that, and I think that the family should model those behaviors, and I think it should be used as a tool to boost the adolescent.
Family for me, your population was average age 18.3, primarily freshmen. In the focus groups, it appeared that there was an intensity of emotions, recalling events, or still experiencing events. Did that come out in the focus group, the intensity?
Yes, it did. The relational aggression experience did not seem to be one that they really had to go back and think about. It seemed that once the question was asked, have you ever been a victim of relational aggression? Tell us about it, and then how did you cope as a result? It just seemed to come out. It seemed that it was not a thing that is easily forgotten. And,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Melissa, I too would like to congratulate you. Really nice job. I wanted to ask you, did you find any studies where, on your topic, where the adolescent was still living in the home as opposed to, out in the world in college or work?
Mm-hmm. Yes, on the earlier research that was conducted with children, so they were still living in the home within the context of the family. So it was a little bit of a mix.
I was just wondering, if you were to redesign your study, how could you get that piece of family to be more evident?
I think in conducting a different study, I could have maybe questioned the family instead of questioning the adolescent. I could have questioned the family about, did your child come to you telling you about an experience where they felt lonely or left out? That might have made the study a little bit stronger, and I think that could have been addressed as a limitation. But because this study was with college students, and I had I wanted to get at their thought process and to see what they did, I chose to go the route of asking the adolescent, but I think in a future study I could have asked the family themselves.
Or if that was their normal pattern, did they always do it? I don't think I have anything else right now.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want it back?
I too want to applaud your effort. You're a consummate researcher. And the experiences you have had are really reflected in what you've done today. And I'm going to cry with you. So before I start, let me ask my question. What qualifications did you have for undertaking this study?
Well, I definitely feel like my coursework here in this program has definitely prepared me. Prior to getting to that stage of collecting data, I sat at the computer endless hours with Dr. Baker's class to learn how to conduct the analysis for the research. And I think that gave me a strong foundation to see where I wanted to go and what kind of questions I wanted to ask and what kind of analysis I wanted to do. I think that was a very strong thing. And then the theory classes, it helped me to explore the theories, to see where I thought that this experience could fit in, to explain it within the theory context. I think that was definitely a strong point. And then, of course, the family value, the family courses helped me to be able to look at this experience as it is impacted within the context of the family.
Okay. And who did you have? What was the qualifications of, what were the qualifications of the person you had on standby in case something happened in your focus group or at times you were collecting data?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not a psychiatric nurse, I needed to have a person, I had actually had a doctorally prepared psychiatric nurse practitioner on hand, psychotherapist on hand to handle any issue that had arisen. Fortunately, to my knowledge, nothing did happen, but I had that person on standby to be able to call in the case of, say, if the emotions did get out of hand as a result of recalling the experience.
Okay. You talked about a parent model, parent modeling behaviors. Mm-hmm. And I know your study had a very definite definition of family. But what about studies that need to be undertaken like this, where the family is not necessarily that core group? Mm-hmm. So what recommendations you would have about studying families mm-hmm. when they're not the traditional core group okay. or even the traditional significant others?
Okay, and thinking about the adolescent who is away at college, I think that when you're away from home, maybe you tend to form a family where you are. And I think in using this, we could possibly use this college environment in the context of garnering the support of others, or at least getting the topics out there to be discussed in a focus group kind of interactive format. I know when I did conduct the focus groups, particularly that last one at the dorm, the females were, just so excited that I was there to talk to them about this experience, because one of the females said, boy, I thought I was the only one going through this. I'm sitting here in my dorm and I feel so lonely, and I didn't know you felt that way too. I didn't know that I had other people around me that felt the same way. And they said, can we do this again? Can we do this some more? Because I think developing that connection would have been really nice for them to have. So I think it would be, that would, in a sense, kind of be a created family for them at that time to go through, to talk about their feelings with another that's going through the same type of thing.
Okay. I'll take you off the hook with the Dr. Phil and Oprah, because that was my suggestion. And I did that because several shows have been on, and I'm sure if you looked at Lifetime and some of the other shows that are on now, it talks about bullying. And matter of fact, it was one show on just recently that talked about bullying, and they had actually ostracized this particular young lady. And they had this whole network of her, quote, friends. They were sending her emails, and the emails were, you know how they can do media. The emails would show her as being very fat at a point, eating a lot, with a big mouth. And when her mother realized that that's what the emails were coming to her daughter, she took the emails to the school. Mm-hmm. And they really couldn't do anything about it until she attempted to take an overdose of pills. She took an overdose of pills. And that's at the point where when her mom came back after she was in the hospital, she printed the email and took it back to the school. And it was only at that time that they had evidence, because they tend to protect their so-called friends. Mm-hmm. And this was really what I wanted you to be able to look at and kind of know that this does happen, and we do need to correct many times the popular literature. Maybe some things in there that's not appropriate, even though they talk about it as being helpful, like Dr. Phil talks about. And again, it's keeping it in context. And I think with your analysis of the responses, you have kept that in context of the researcher. When you think about distancing as one of the outcomes, what might be subcategories of distancing?
I think a subcategory could be it's hard to make friends, or I'm gonna protect myself from future hurt, and I think that was all encompassed in that distancing of others. It was a way to form a cocoon. So I think it was a sub-theme could be protection, self-protection, self-preservation.
Okay. And just for the teaching moment for students that are here, when Melissa did the themes, you can have sub-themes. And when you are looking through your comments from your focus groups, also look for major themes. Then once you identify the major themes, look for the sub-themes, because it may be a way at getting at other kinds of activities that we might be able to provide rescue for adolescents in their families as well as in schools and relationships.
I'm pleased to have the opportunity to say congratulations for a job well done. Having had the opportunity to observe you in much of the process, it is just really wonderful to see the product of the process. I found it quite enlightening. You always want to know what it's going to look like at the end. And I often refer to this process as a birthing process, because that's what it is. This is your third child. Okay. I heard Dr. Davis try to pull it out of you, and I'm going to go back to it and just state it. That one thing we hope that you never forget to acknowledge is the support, and certainly I'm sure all of the learning opportunities provided through the Hampton Penn experience. And while you fully acknowledge the courses and what they provided you here, I believe that you might have had 3 years of Hampton Penn, or maybe more, I'm not really sure. But I think that opportunity that you have had certainly enriched the basic education that we provide here. And I thought that's where Dr. Davis was going. Maybe she wasn't, maybe I was just fixed on that. But the altered state of wellness that you talked about, you kind of put it up there. And so as I was trying to map out, because you know I'm the visual one, so I had to draw here, I could see that the inverse relationship between your self-esteem and your regression, and then your positive relationship between your self-esteem, your depression and your aggression is there, and that in the end is what you called an altered state, I think, of wellness, if I followed you correctly. Certainly you're adding much to the literature, and so we look forward to you sharing that with the community of scholars, as well as taking this as a launching pad to develop interventions. The last thing, as a comment, and I'm not going to question you, I'll just provide you with comments because I know you've got some questions already, is that although you listed conducting your study in a college setting as a limitation, I want to challenge your thinking that that's a value. That makes your study so special, and perhaps it should not be perceived as a limitation, but a rich opportunity that you have to contribute to science, to the state of science. And that the survey process, using multiple surveys, again, should, in my, and this is my 2 cents, should not be perceived as a limitation, but as a richness of a study that you are contributing to science to the science of nursing, to the scholarship of research. And so those should not be perceived as weaknesses nor limitations of your study. You have a wonderful study. We look forward to seeing it in print in the years to come. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a few questions, because I do have some. But I am eager to hear questions from the audience and not just from those of us who've been with you through this. As a PEDS nurse, by education and practice, longer time ago practice, I do have two questions. You started off by talking about the literature and how we tend to socialize young girls. Be a lady, don't talk back, watch how you say this. And how that may relate to aggression later by them doing the covert aggression. What are your suggestions, or what does the literature say? What should we do? Because we still tell little girls to be a lady and play nice and don't fight.
Right. I possibly think that to make the playing field even, I think we should say the same things to males. For one thing, no, to not fight, to not to prevent the perpetuation of violence. I think that we should possibly socialize them both ways. But also, I think that maybe we should tell girls to stick up for themselves more. We should teach them to be more forthright in their disagreements, maybe, instead of holding things in and trying to get at the individual that's wronged them in a covert manner. I think maybe doing the intervention techniques by teaching the communication and the coping, particularly the communication styles. So if I have a problem with you, instead of me walking past you and ignoring you, how about we socialize the young girl to be able to confront an individual in a calm manner, and I think a lot of that should be modeled in the home. I think that we tend to do what we've seen and what we've been taught, and I think that if we change the way we socialize girls, that could happen.
Okay, my other question was, again, from a pediatric standpoint, how would you suggest, you said something in your, not long after that statement, you talked about adolescents and their normal moodiness. And this moodiness may have something to do with peer relational aggression. How are we supposed to know the difference in just regular adolescent moodiness versus, oh my gosh, they're isolating her today? So what do you suggest?
I think it really starts with the communication in the home, communication between individuals. I think that probably starts at a young age, where you have this open style between parent, child, or family and child, so that if you can pick up on that change in behavior. I don't have an adolescent, but I have worked with adolescents, and I think that persistent moodiness, that persistent irritability, I think is the one that you really have to look out for. That intermittent, maybe it could be could have been a result of an experience that day, but I think you'll get at that through talking to the individual.
Okay, I want to thank you for adding to the body of literature for not just pediatric nurses, but for family researchers and other social and behavioral scientists. I remember last week when you came and announced to me that you were having a defense today, and I was like, really? Did your committee tell you that? I say now that you were right. You were ready, and I thank you for that.
That means a lot.
want to tell you congratulations as well. Some of the questions I was going to ask Dr. Davis and Dr. Baker, and Dean had already asked, but I'm the simplistic one. So forgive me if I ask something again because I really want to have a clarity. One question I had was very interesting. With your focus group, you talked about the students wanting you to come back because they were sharing experiences. Because your age group was freshmen between about 18 years old, now that they are here in the university setting, and you said it wasn't difficult for them to go back to bring back that information and those experiences, are they recognizing, because most of them are living in the dorm, they're freshmen as they are in the dorm,
Mm-hmm.
are they seeing some of those same experiences now at being the dorm life here on campus?
Mm-hmm. Actually, in conducting the focus groups, I wanted them to think about an experience in their past that they had. I said, tell me about a time you experienced peer relational aggression victimization. And they did. They recalled the experience from their high school years, which is a reason why I wanted them to be 1 year removed from high school, because I wanted them to think about an experience that they felt. But then, to my surprise, at the time, the topic evolved into the experiences that were happening right then and there. And that's where a lot of the data came from. And it really blew my mind. Well, I don't know if it really blew my mind, but it was really interesting because these experiences permeate into all areas. And I think this is evidenced by it happening now in college. I think possibly if I conducted a study here, among coworkers, I think that we could find some experiences of peer relational aggression victimization.
Okay, thank you. The second question I had was concerned about the self-esteem and leading to more depression. For African American females in this country, do you think, and probably more your opinion, the fact of the way our society is in general, is the impact on the way our adolescents handle this regression is going to be more significant than what you see in the majority population, or they handle it a little bit different?
The results indicated that the coping patterns were similar, but I think what's important about this study is that it indicates that the coping patterns are similar. Although that working it out, I didn't see necessarily that much in the literature. That trying to teach this other person what it's like to be a friend, that was something that came up. But it's possible that the experiences from the females in this study could their coping responses could be modeled to other populations.
And the last thing, I know your husband won't hear this, but how soon are you going to do your postdoc?
I actually have been saying the whole time that I'm going to do a postdoc. I haven't actively sought out the postdoc yet, but it is in my mind, and I knew coming into the program, I knew that I had to do a postdoc, just because. And to tell you the truth, I love school, and it's kind of sad to see it end. I kid with my husband and say I'm going to go back and get another bachelor's, but I like school, and if there's an opportunity to learn, I'm there. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say how proud I am of my daughter. She's always wowed us ever since she was a little bitty girl. She's always been in the top of her class in high school. She was in Who's Who among high school students. She always blows us away, and we're so proud of you, and we love you.
She only came to our family a few years ago, but I'm so glad we chose her.
I just want to say this is so wonderful. I really have a statement, not a question. And I guess I was thinking about it, and as a mental health nurse, it even sort of kind of blew up a flag when we kind of thought major depression aspect. And then when Dr. Servonsky and you, the two of you were speaking, and you were saying that you should have addressed the limitation as far as strength as far as family. However, if we could look at it, it's not really a limitation because you really presented this well with a family life course theory when you had you defined family here when you look on page 4 with her pertinent literature, how she defined family, and then for the family life course literature, if you look at how you presented that, these students, someone said, almost made up a family here on campus, and then how you think about when they did do that, coming here to make up that family, then how you presented the Newman model, how that was penetrated when they got hurt, and then that depression sort of, may follow that. So this is really I'm telling you, this is an asset to scientific knowledge that is just, me speaking as a mental health person, I really appreciate this. I really appreciate this study.
Oh, this was just wonderful. I'm sitting here thinking maybe my children went through that. I don't know. So what? I think I'm looking. You really made me look at. People listen knows I have some little adolescents, and so I'm gonna let my daughter know that she needs to start watching her girls a little closer, because as you look at even the students here, there's some strong, relationships with the students that sometimes depend on what they do or don't do. So it would be interesting to see how some of the older students, in the schools, if they're still having those same types of issues. So thank you.
I'm going to say something quick. Melissa, I just want to say congratulations. I had a similar situation happen to me, but I was a senior in college, and my roommate stopped talking to me. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I would cry every day. My mom, I would talk to my mom. But I was living with this person. Okay. So one thing that helped me cope is I actually strengthened my relationship with my other friends. Okay. So that's how I learned to cope with it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hi, Ms. Gomes. I am, considered one of the older traditional students at Hampton University, but day one walking onto this campus or into this building, you have just been a godsend for me. You have always been cordial, and I can tell you, sitting here today was my first ever experience of watching a dissertation defense. Prior to this, I had always said, I'm never going to get my doctorate. Never, ever. And today has really got me to thinking that it's possible. And I thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be nice. Melissa, you know what I was thinking about when I was listening? I don't like this thing. Okay. What I was thinking about is the spirituality part with the students. Did any of them bring up God or their beliefs or any, that in dealing and coping with this?
It didn't seem to permeate the focus group. I think that maybe if I had asked some more questions concerning spirituality, if I had initiated some more probes, that could have come out. But that's a good idea for a future study.
That's it. And congratulations. I miss your tip-top coming through the light.
Hi, Melissa. Congratulations again. You did an excellent job. I had one of the first things that stuck out at me. I'm not a nurse. I have nothing to do with medicine or anything. But as a parent, just listening was when the studies, you didn't kind of cover if there were any studies done on adolescents that aren't in college. I'd be curious to know what the levels of, relational aggression and or physical aggression are in adolescents that aren't in a higher education program.
The research it still needs to be built on. It really does. And I think it really has started to build up. but there's more work to be done, and I think that that could be another way to educate the public by conducting research on varying groups.
Thank you to Ms. Figueroa, because I had a question about the family demographics. Again, because I'm not a nurse, I didn't understand the family theory model, because I was going to ask, what were the demographics of the families within your focus groups? How many of the adolescents, came from dual parent households versus a single parent household versus a foster home, and if that had anything to do with the outcome of your study?
And again, that could be addressed as a limitation of my study. I didn't ask that question. It wasn't, I just wanted to know, did they talk to somebody in their family, whoever they said was their family? Because as I mentioned earlier, a family is whoever you said. So I didn't delineate who the family was. I just asked them for overall family.
Good job.
Okay, we will retire to 1:31.
I'm gonna stand up.
All right.
If you've never seen a 6'3", 250-pound man cry, you're about to. Okay. I have watched Melissa juggle 2 children, church, PhD, and a very needy husband for the last 2 years. And I just want to let you know how proud I am. I thought my accomplishments in baseball were pretty good, but it would never compare with what you did. And I want you to know that I want you always to know that whatever you decide to do after this, you're going to be an asset to whatever direction you decide to go. Not a liability, but an asset. Because you have the big joker. In church, our pastor talks about having the big joker. And now, after today, you have the big joker. And I just want to tell you, from Miles and Wesley and myself, how proud we are of you and how much we love you.
She really needed this.
Well, we have deliberated, and the first time in public, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bertha. Enjoy. Dr. Gomes said over and over. And we have other research to finish that is already committed. Yes, we do.
Doctor, did you get a speech? Thank y'all. You can use that one,
I just want to thank everybody that has supported me in this process. I certainly didn't get here by myself. And I said I wasn't going to cry. I can cry now.
You can't cry.
I'm just so thankful that I listened to God to tell me to do this. I've always wanted to do it to get my doctorate since undergrad. But there was a time that I stayed home with my kids, and it was a great time. I had a great time with them. And, but I always had this longing for this, and I'm glad I listened.
Yay!